The Boeing 777 sliced smoothly through the morning sky, sunlight pouring across the Pacific like polished gold. Flight 772 from Seattle to Seoul carried 187 passengers, families, students, business travelers, and one woman who preferred to remain unnoticed. She sat quietly in seat 14A, her posture relaxed, her clothes simple, her demeanor calm enough that no one paid her more than a passing glance. Her name was Ava Morgan, though most would never know the weight behind it. She wore a faded burgundy shirt and dark jeans, her hair tied into a low ponytail. A small duffel bag rested under the seat in front of her. To everyone else, she looked like a tired traveler heading overseas. But Ava's eyes told a different story, sharp, alert, carrying a depth of awareness she couldn't turn off, no matter how far she tried to run from her past. The flight attendant paused beside her with a warm smile. "Water or coffee, ma'am?" "Water is fine," Ava replied gently. She didn't mention she had spent 22 years flying some of the world's fastest jets, nor that she'd retired only months earlier after nearly a lifetime in the skies. She didn't say she'd once been known by a name pilots spoke with quiet respect, Mistral. It was a name earned in storms, missions, and moments where her calm had saved lives. Today, she wanted none of that. She wanted peace. The man next to her, a chatty tourist named Daniel, leaned slightly her way. "Heading to Korea for work?" "Just visiting someone," she said simply. "Ah, must be nice." "I'm terrified of flying," he laughed nervously. Ava smiled, reassuring but vague. "You're in good hands. These aircraft are incredibly reliable." But even as she said it, she felt something, a faint tremor most people would dismiss as turbulence. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She knew the difference between a routine bump and a mechanical problem breathing, its first warning. Then came the second vibration. Longer, deeper, wrong. Ava's breath slowed. Her instincts sharpened. She closed her book without looking down. Seconds later, a violent bang ripped through the fuselage. The aircraft jerked hard to the left. Screams erupted. Oxygen masks dropped. The cabin lights flickered as passengers fumbled in panic. Daniel's hands shook as he grabbed his mask. What's happening?" Ava was already moving, tightening her mask with practiced speed. She glanced out her window, and her heart clenched. Engine 2 was shredding itself apart. Metal fragments spun into the sky. Flames licked the wing. And worse, she saw a shimmering spray trailing behind the engine. Hydraulic fluid. The captain's shaky voice came over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing an engine malfunction. Please remain seated." Ava heard the fear behind his words. And she heard something else, the erratic pitch of a pilot fighting a losing battle with crippled controls. A flight attendant rushed down the aisle, pale, trembling, nearly stumbling as the aircraft began an uncontrolled descent. Ava reached out and caught her wrist. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice firm, commanding, steady. "I'm a veteran military pilot. I can help. Take me to the cockpit, now." The attendant froze. I can't." "You can," Ava said, locking eyes with her. "Tell them Mistral is on board." The name hit like a shockwave. The attendant exhaled shakily and nodded. 30 seconds later, the cockpit door flew open. Ava stepped inside and instantly understood the scale of the disaster. The captain was slumped unconscious, his breathing shallow. The first officer, a young man barely in his mid-20s, fought the controls with shaking arms. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Engine failure, hydraulic failure, flight control warning, cabin pressure alerts. "I can't hold it," he cried. "We're losing everything." Ava didn't hesitate. She gently moved the unconscious captain aside, took the seat, strapped in, and placed her hands on the trembling yoke. "My name is Ava Morgan," she said calmly. "Call sign Mistral. I'm taking command." The first officer stared at her, stunned. Are you that Mistral?" Ava's eyes stayed forward, scanning instruments, reading damage, feeling the aircraft like an extension of her own pulse. "We don't have time for that," she said. "We're going to save everyone on this plane. But you need to work with me. Now." The aircraft shook violently again as flames roared outside the window. Ava tightened her grip. Her quiet past was over. Mistral was back. Ava eased the trembling yoke, feeling the damaged jet fight her every command. The aircraft kept rolling left, the ruined engine dragging them downward like a dead weight. The first officer, Ethan Park, struggled to stabilize the controls, panic creeping into his breathing. "We're descending too fast," Ethan gasped. 2,000 feet per minute, maybe more. Ava's voice remained calm, firm, unshaken. "Focus. We still have options." Her eyes scanned the instrument panel. Hydraulic pressure almost gone, engine 2 offline, multiple control surfaces barely responding. She tested the ailerons, felt almost nothing. She nudged the rudder. That still worked. Good. Rudder meant control. Not much, but enough for a pilot like her. A sudden jolt shook the cockpit as the aircraft dipped again. Alarms blared. Overspeed, cabin pressure, structural stress. Ethan flinched at every warning light. Ava didn't. She'd flown jets while dodging missiles. These sounds were familiar, terrifying for most, but not for her. "Reduce thrust on engine 1, she ordered. "That'll make the roll worse." Ethan cried. "No, it'll balance the asymmetry. Trust me." He obeyed, hands shaking. The aircraft rolled even farther for a moment, then slowly steadied. The violent left drag softened. Ava nodded. "Good. We can work with this." Ethan stared at her, a mix of fear and hope in his eyes. "Who are you?" "A pilot," Ava said simply. "And right now, the only thing that matters is keeping this aircraft in the sky." He swallowed hard and nodded. Ava grabbed the radio microphone. "Mayday, mayday, this is Flight 772 Heavy. We have catastrophic engine failure, hydraulic loss, and the captain is incapacitated. I am assuming command." Air traffic control responded instantly. 772, copy your emergency. Identify yourself." "This is Ava Morgan," she said steadily. "Former Air Force tactical pilot. Call sign Mistral." There was a silence, long enough that Ethan glanced toward her, realizing the name had weight beyond anything he had imagined. Then ATC's tone changed, sharpened, professional. "Mistral, emergency support is being coordinated. Stand by." Ava continued assessing the damage. She tried small control inputs, feeling how the aircraft responded or didn't. The left wing was losing lift. The flight deck vibrated with structural tension. She could almost sense the metal groaning beneath them. "Altitude?" she asked. 14,000, Ethan said. "Still descending." Ava inhaled deeply and focused. "We need to level out. Hold your rudder steady. I'll trim as we go." Together, they coaxed the battered jet into a controlled, though imperfect, glide. The descent slowed. Not stable, but survivable. "Where's our nearest diversion?" she asked. "ATC recommends Yokota Air Base," Ethan replied. "Military runway. Long, strong, equipped for emergencies." "Perfect." The radio crackled. "Flight 772, this is Yokota Command. We have your emergency. Fighters are launching to escort." Ethan stared at the radio. "Fighters? Why would they?" "They're coming to inspect our damage," Ava said softly. And because they recognized the call sign. Before she could explain further, a scream echoed from the cabin behind them. A flight attendant burst into the cockpit doorway, breathless and terrified. "Captain Morgan, the passengers are panicking. People are crying. Some won't put on masks. We need help." Ethan turned, overwhelmed. "We can't leave the controls." Ava didn't raise her voice, but her tone carried a weight that settled the chaos instantly. "Tell everyone this. The aircraft is being flown by someone trained for emergencies far worse than this. Tell them we're diverting, and we're going to land safely. Repeat that word for word." The attendant nodded and rushed out, her fear replaced with purpose. Ethan exhaled shakily. "You really think we can save this plane?" Ava didn't answer right away. She felt the aircraft shudder again, metal grinding somewhere deep in the wing root. The stakes tightened around her chest, but she pushed the fear aside. "We're going to save them," she said. "All 187. The radio crackled once more. "Mistral, this is Falcon Lead. 2 F-22 Raptors en route. ETA 10 minutes. Ready to assist." Ava closed her eyes briefly. F-22s. Her world, the one she had left behind, was coming back to meet her in the sky. "Mistral copies," she replied. "We'll be ready." Far below, the ocean glittered. Above, the sky stretched endlessly. And the woman who had tried to bury her past knew one thing. It was time for Mistral to rise again. 10 minutes later, the sky ahead shimmered with two fast-moving shapes, sleek, angular, cutting through the blue like blades. The F-22 F-22 Raptors closed distance rapidly, their silver-gray bodies glinting in the sunlight. Even in a crippled commercial jet, Ava felt a familiar surge in her chest at the sight. The fighter community had arrived. Ethan pressed his face closer to the windshield. Oh my God, they're really here. Ava allowed herself a small nod. They're here because of the situation, and because of the call sign they heard. The radio crackled alive. Flight 772, this is Falcon Lead. Mistral, is that you in command? Ava answered without hesitation. Affirmative, Falcon Lead. I have the controls. We need a full visual assessment of our damage. Falcon Lead's tone shifted instantly. Respectful, steady. Copy that, Mistral. Moving into position. One Raptor dropped low and scanned the belly of the 777. The second slid gracefully beside the wounded left wing, staying unbelievably close despite the turbulence from the damaged engine. It was a dance only the most skilled pilots could perform safely. Ava could almost see the pilot's visor turn toward her. Seconds later, Falcon Lead reported in. Mistral, your left engine is completely destroyed. Pylon partially separated. We see fluid leaks from multiple lines. Leading edge missing about 5 feet. Structural integrity compromised, but holding, for now. Ethan exhaled shakily. How are we still flying? Ava tightened her grip on the yoke. Because we're not done yet. Falcon Lead continued. We recommend minimal turbulence, reduced bank angles, and minimum flap landing. You'll have one chance. No go around. Ava nodded. Understood. Stay with us. Mistral, we're not leaving your side, the pilot said softly. The familiarity in his voice tugged at her memory, but she brushed it aside. Focus came first. Inside the cabin, turbulence rattled overhead bins. Flight attendants struggled to calm panicked passengers. Children cried, adults prayed, and whispers of, "We're going to crash," spread through the aisles like wildfire. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. Should we tell them the truth? That the aircraft might not hold? Ava glanced at him, not with annoyance, but understanding. Fear made honesty feel like a duty. But panic killed faster than any engine failure. We tell them hope, she said. Because hope keeps people alive. She pressed the intercom button. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the pilot speaking. We've experienced a mechanical issue, but we are working closely with military support and air traffic control. We're heading to a safe landing location. Please stay calm, follow crew instructions, and know we have full control. Her calm voice washed across the cabin like a hand on the shoulder. Passengers looked at each other, still scared, but reassured. A few breathed easier. Children quieted. Even in chaos, calm leadership had power. Ethan looked at her with awe. You sounded so certain. That's because certainty is what they need, Ava replied. Doubt can wait until we're on the ground. The aircraft jolted again, harder this time. Warning lights flashed, fuel imbalance. Ethan frowned. We're leaking from the left wing tank. The imbalance will worsen the roll. Ava considered for a moment. Crossfeed the fuel. Move weight to the right side to counter the drag. Ethan hurried to follow her instructions, his hands steadier than before. Working beside her, he felt something he hadn't expected, confidence. You know, he said quietly, I've practiced emergencies like this in simulators. But nothing comes close to this. Ava softened her voice. You're doing well. Stay focused. Fear doesn't mean you're weak, it means you care. His eyes glistened briefly. No captain has ever told me that. You've never flown with me, she said with a small smile. The radio lit up again. Mistral, this is Falcon 2. Tower has cleared all runways. Emergency crews are ready. We'll guide your descent. Ava inhaled slowly. All right. Ethan, we start our approach in 15 minutes. We'll manage the speed, trim, and descent rate together. No sudden inputs. He nodded firmly. Yes, Captain. Outside, the Raptors tightened formation, positioning themselves like guardians guiding a wounded bird home. Inside, Ava felt the aircraft wobble again. Every vibration a reminder of how thin the line was between life and disaster. But she stayed steady, her voice steady, her soul steady. She had spent years flying into storms. Today, she would fly out of one, with 187 lives depending on her. The descent toward Yokota Air Base began like a slow-motion battle between machine and gravity. Every adjustment Ava made required force, controlled, deliberate, almost surgical. The yoke shuddered constantly, fighting her hands. The aircraft rolled left with every breath of wind, the damaged wing groaning under the pressure. Ethan monitored the gauges, calling out readings with growing confidence. Altitude 18,000, speed holding, fuel crossfeed stabilizing. Ava nodded, eyes scanning the horizon. Good. Keep it steady. Small corrections only. Outside the cockpit windows, the two F-22s flew in perfect formation. Their presence was more than escort, it was reassurance. It meant help was close. It meant the sky wasn't empty. It meant she wasn't alone. The radio crackled. Mistral, Falcon lead. Approaching controlled airspace. We'll perform another close inspection on descent. Copy, Ava replied. Falcon 2 slid underneath the aircraft again, its nose almost level with the belly of the 777. Even with the huge size difference, the F-22 danced effortlessly through the turbulent air, the pilot holding position with masterful precision. Ava could picture the pilot inside, steady hands, focused eyes, analyzing every inch of damage. After a minute, his voice returned, more serious than before. Mistral, structural cracks are spreading along the wing root. You must minimize stress. Keep bank angles under 5 degrees. Ethan's eyes widened. 5 degrees? That's barely a turn. Ava responded calmly. We'll use rudder for alignment. Just like damaged fighters. Falcon lead added. Runway is clear. Emergency crews standing by. Winds light from the east. Ava adjusted the rudder, aligning their path with the guidance on the navigation display. Every movement felt like steering a wounded giant. Heavy, unstable, unpredictable. Ethan glanced at her again. How are you so calm? I've never seen anyone handle a failure this bad. Ava kept her gaze forward. Calm isn't the absence of fear. It's control over it. Remember that. He swallowed, nodding slowly. As they descended through 12,000 feet, turbulence struck. A sudden jolt that made the overhead panels rattle violently. The aircraft rolled left hard. Ethan gasped. We're losing it. Ava countered instantly, applying coordinated rudder and trim, forcing the aircraft back to level. Not today, she whispered under her breath. Not with 187 people behind us. Ethan stared at her in shock. You just saved us from spiraling. That wasn't the worst I've handled, she said. We're still in this. In the cabin, people clung to each other, crying, shaking, praying. Some whispered desperate promises. Others stared at the windows with trembling hands over their hearts. But slowly, because Ava's voice earlier had steadied them, panic faded into cautious hope. A flight attendant entered the cockpit again, her voice more controlled than before. The passengers are calmer now. Whatever you said, it helped. Ava nodded. Prepare them for a hard landing. Minimal flaps. Impact may be rough. We'll handle it, the attendant said, newfound confidence in her tone. Back at the controls, Ethan checked their distance. We're 20 miles out. Descending through 9,000. Ava exhaled, a quiet sigh of focus. This is where everything matters. No mistakes from here on. Falcon lead's voice came through again. Mistral, you're lined up perfectly. Begin reducing speed. Avoid sudden changes. Ethan adjusted the throttle, watching speed bleed off slowly. Ava guided the aircraft with small, controlled movements. Even so, the jet felt unstable, trembling like a living creature in pain. At 5,000 feet, the ground came into view. The long, wide runway of Yokohama, surrounded by rows of emergency vehicles, flashing red and yellow lights. Ethan whispered, I've never seen a runway so full. That's because they understand how serious this is, Ava said softly. Falcon 2 called in. Mistral, winds calm. You're cleared to land whenever ready. Ava inhaled deeply. All right, Ethan. Gear down. He pulled the lever. The landing gear descended with a heavy thud. Flaps 10. The aircraft shuddered violently. So hard, Ethan grabbed the panel for support. Ava tightened her grip. Hold your nerves. The wing will fight us, but it'll hold. Their speed was high, their descent shallow, their margin razor thin. But Ava controlled the glide path with steady precision. 3,000 feet. 2,000. 1,000. Falcon lead's voice softened. You've got this, Mistral. Ava's world narrowed to a single point, the runway threshold. Ethan, she said, firm but calm. No matter what happens, don't touch the controls unless I say. He nodded, fully trusting her now. The aircraft dipped once more, one last violent shudder, as the damaged wing torqued under pressure. Ava fought it, every muscle in her arms burning. One chance, she murmured. One perfect landing. The runway rushed up to meet them. She breathed once, steadied her hands, and prepared for the most critical seconds of her life. The wheels touched the runway with a harsh metallic thud, heavy, abrupt, but controlled. The aircraft bounced once, the damaged wing dipping dangerously low before Ava corrected with swift, precise rudder pressure. Ethan gasped, gripping the edge of his seat so tightly his knuckles turned white. Ava didn't flinch. She held the yoke firm, guiding the wounded aircraft with the kind of instinct no simulator could ever teach. Hold, she whispered, eyes laser-focused on the far end of the runway. The nose gear lowered seconds later, slamming into the pavement with a forceful jolt that shook every bolt along the fuselage. Warning lights flared across the panel. Hydraulic fail, spoiler fail, brake temp high, but Ava stayed steady. Ethan cried out, "We're coming in too fast. We won't stop in time." Ava's voice remained calm, razor sharp. "We're not stopping with brakes. We'll stop with air." She pulled back on the yoke, increasing aerodynamic drag, forcing the aircraft to resist the forward momentum. The damaged wing shuddered, groaning under the strain, but it held, just barely. Emergency vehicles lined both sides of the runway like guardians. Fire trucks blasted water in readiness. Ambulances waited with paramedics at full alert, and ground personnel braced as Flight 772 roared past them. Speed dropping. Ethan called out, his voice trembling. 160, 140, 120. Good. We're getting there. Keep calling it. Ava felt the aircraft tug left again, the damaged wing pulling them off center. She fought it with controlled rudder pressure, arms burning but unwavering. 100 knots. Ethan shouted. 90, 70, 50, 40. A final shudder rippled through the aircraft, as if the jet itself exhaled in exhaustion, before slowing into a rolling crawl. Then, finally, it came to a complete stop. Silence. Ava closed her eyes for 1 second, letting the moment settle. She didn't allow herself to shake or collapse, not yet. The people behind her needed strength, needed certainty. Ethan let out a sob of relief, pressing a hand over his mouth. You saved us. You actually saved us." Ava opened her eyes, steady as ever. "We saved them together. Now let's get everyone out safely." Ground crews rushed toward them, emergency lights flashing across the cracked windows. Firefighters surrounded the left wing, spraying foam across the smoldering engine remains. Paramedics boarded to check on the unconscious captain. Inside the cabin, passengers erupted into emotional applause, some crying, some hugging strangers, some sinking to their knees in gratitude. Their voices mixed into a wave of overwhelming relief. A flight attendant called from behind them, her eyes shimmering. "Captain Morgan, the passengers want to thank you." Ava shook her head gently. "Let's get them evacuated first. Gratitude can come after safety." Ethan watched her with awe. This wasn't just skill, it was character. The radio buzzed again. "Mistral, this is Falcon Lead. Touchdown was flawless. You brought her home." A different voice joined, calmer, deeper. "Mistral, good to hear your voice again." Ava froze for a brief moment, recognizing the voice instantly. "Falcon 2, she murmured. "Didn't think I'd hear you again. Didn't think I'd be escorting you," the pilot replied. "But if anyone could land a jet in that condition, it was you." Ava allowed herself a soft breath, a rare moment of emotion passing through her eyes. "Thank you for staying with us. Both of you. Wouldn't have left you for anything," Falcon 2 said quietly. Ethan glanced between Ava and the radio, stunned. You know them?" Ava gave a faint smile. "The fighter community is small and loud." Emergency crews opened the cabin door, guiding passengers out one by one. Many cried as their feet touched solid ground. Some looked back at the cockpit with tears of gratitude. An elderly man stopped at the doorway, leaning heavily on a cane. "You're the one who kept us alive?" Ava answered gently. "I just did what any pilot should." "No," he whispered, voice breaking. "You did more." Next came a mother clutching her baby. She approached Ava with shaking hands. "Thank you for giving my daughter a future." Ava touched the baby's tiny hand softly. "Get her home safe. That's all that matters." After half an hour, the last passenger exited. The cabin grew quiet. the weight of the event settling like a heavy blanket. Ethan turned to her. What now? Ava exhaled slowly. Now, the world finds out what happened and who they were flying with. Outside, cameras and news vans were already gathering beyond the cordoned-off area. The story was spreading like wildfire. Military pilot saves 187 aboard crippled jet. Ethan walked beside her as they stepped out of the cockpit. You know they're calling you a hero already, right? Ava looked toward the horizon where the F-22s circled once more before returning home. She shook her head slightly. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away when people needed help. But deep down, she knew the truth. Mistral had returned to the sky, and nothing would ever be the same. Ava stepped onto the tarmac, the cool air brushing against her face as she watched the emergency crews swarm around the wounded aircraft. Flames were gone, smoke was fading, but the damage told the entire story. How close they had come, how thin the margin had been between survival and tragedy. Ethan walked beside her in stunned silence. He kept glancing at her as if trying to understand how an ordinary-looking woman could command a disaster with the composure of a seasoned warrior. Within minutes, senior Air Force officers emerged from a transport vehicle that had landed just after them. Their uniforms were crisp, their movements urgent, their eyes searching, until they found her. The leading officer, a tall woman with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, stepped forward. Her presence carried authority, someone used to commanding entire squadrons. Ava Morgan, she said quietly. Or should I say, Mistral? Ava's posture straightened. The name carried memories, missions, losses, victories, and storms weathered both in the air and in her heart. General Brooks, Ava replied, giving a respectful nod. Didn't expect to see you here. The general's expression softened, but only slightly. After what you accomplished today, there was no chance we'd let someone else greet you. Behind her, Falcon Lead and Falcon 2 approached in their flight suits. The moment Falcon 2 removed his helmet, Ethan's breath caught. He was younger than expected, sharp-eyed, confident. But when he looked at Ava, his expression changed to pure respect. Ma'am, Falcon 2 said, standing at attention. That landing. I've never seen anything like it. Falcon Lead stepped closer. When we heard the call sign Mistral, the entire operations room froze. People whispered your name. Some thought it couldn't be real. Ava shook her head. It was just a damaged aircraft and a bad situation. Falcon Lead's eyebrows rose. Ma'am, please. That wasn't just anything. That was one of the worst structural failures I've ever witnessed. And you flew it like it was a training drill. The general added firmly. Your actions saved 187 lives today. That deserves recognition. As they spoke, news cameras from the far end of the base zoomed in, capturing her face, her stance, the two fighter pilots next to her. The story was spreading across the world in real time. Ethan leaned toward her and whispered, You're a legend to them. Ava didn't answer. She wasn't comfortable with the word. Legends lived in stories. She lived in reality, and reality demanded humility. The general gestured for her to follow. Captain Morgan, we've arranged a brief commendation ceremony. Minimal press. Mostly Air Force personnel. They insisted. Ava sighed quietly, then nodded. All right. As they walked, people lined the path. Pilots, engineers, airmen, standing at attention. Some saluted her. Others simply looked at her with awe. A few whispered her name like it was part of aviation mythology. Mistral. It's really her. She flew with the 17th Tactical Wing. I heard she once landed an F-15 after losing both hydraulics. Ava kept her gaze forward, humbled but composed. Inside the hangar, chairs were arranged facing a small podium. Air Force flags lined the back. The general stepped up first, speaking clearly into the microphone. Today, the world witnessed something extraordinary. When disaster struck Flight 772, one retired pilot, who asked for no recognition, no praise, stepped forward. She guided a crippled aircraft through catastrophic damage, demonstrating precision, strength, and courage under unimaginable pressure. She looked at Ava. Captain Ava Morgan, call sign Mistral. Your act of airmanship will be studied for decades. The hangar erupted into respectful applause. Falcon Lead and Falcon 2 stood proudly beside her, their expressions filled with admiration. Ethan watched from the side, tears in his eyes. He had never seen such overwhelming respect directed at one person. General Brooks continued, "Before I call Captain Morgan forward, several members of the fighter community requested to speak directly." She switched to the tactical channel and placed the radio on speaker mode. A voice came through, clear, heartfelt. "Mistral, this is Viper 3 from Nellis. The fighter community salutes you." Another voice followed. "Falcon 9 from Kadena. Your landing was textbook perfection. Raptor 21, honor to fly in the same sky as you today." Voices poured in one after another. Pilots from different bases, different generations, different aircraft. They spoke not to a stranger, but to a returning hero. Ava lowered her head slightly, overwhelmed yet steady. Finally, Falcon 2 stepped forward, removing his gloves as he spoke softly. "When we saw the damage, I didn't think any commercial pilot could hold that aircraft together. But then we heard your voice." He smiled gently. "When I realized it was Mistral up there, I knew those people had a chance." The general extended a small, velvet-lined box toward Ava. "For extraordinary skill, leadership, and bravery, we present you with the Air Force Citation of Honor." Ava accepted it, though the weight of the moment felt heavier than the medal. After the ceremony, she stepped outside the hangar. The sky was quiet now, peaceful. Ethan joined her, still processing everything. "Captain, what you did today will change lives." Ava looked at the horizon where the fighters had disappeared. "I didn't do it for fame. I did it because they needed someone who wouldn't give up." Ethan smiled softly. "That's exactly why the world needs to know your story." Ava exhaled, feeling the wind across her face. Mistral, a name she thought she had left behind, now spoken again with honor. And she realized, maybe carrying that name wasn't a burden. Maybe it was her purpose.